Um, Thank you for joining us today. Um, as was mentioned, my name is Devin Gray. I am the director of the CFA Programs Division here at the Department of Community and Economic Development, or DCED. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Solar for Schools program. So this was a program that was originally created in 2024, and we opened the first round of it in November of 2024, closing in January 2025 when we made some awards in May of last year. We had $25 million allocated to the program originally. We were able to award most of it, but we did have a little bit left over. And then that, in addition, with an additional 25 million that we were awarded through last year's fiscal budget, or not awarded, but allocated through last year's fiscal budget, is going to be used to open up the program again. So the come on, there we go. So the program did open on Monday, January 26th, so just this past Monday. One major change that we made is, unlike last year, where we had kind of a 3-month window to apply in, the program is just going to be accepting applications continuously on a rolling basis until all of the funds are exhausted this year. So we expect to make awards roughly every 2 months at the CFA board meetings, with the first possible round of awards being in March if we have applications that are ready to go to that meeting. Um, the program website will have sort of a running total of the amount available in each region, and I'll update that after each round of awards so that everybody can know kind of how much we have. Um, and that website can be found at the program website can be found at dcd.pa.gov. I do have a link to that in the slides, which I will be sure to pass along. But I will
Devin,
pause here. Yeah,
yes.
looks like we have
Okay,
Rep Fiedler.
we do have Rep Fiedler. Rep Fiedler, would you like to take a few moments to speak about the Solar for Schools grant program if you're available? We can just come back to her when she is ready.
Okay.
But when she's ready, she will give us a little bit more about the intent and vision behind the Solar for Schools grant, and we're really excited for her to be here with us. So thank you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, so as I was mentioning, the program webpage can be found on the dcd.pa.gov website. I do have a link in the slides that I will be sending over to Piccola after the webinar is done, so those can be shared. Um, and it can also be found just by going to our website and searching for S4S in the search bar at the top right. It looks like we have Rep Fiedler here, and maybe she's ready to talk. If so, I can pause here for a minute and let her kind of have the floor.
Hi, Rep Fiedler. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all for hosting this webinar. I'm really excited.
I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about the intent and vision behind the Solar for Schools grant program.
Sure, of course. I'm State Rep Elizabeth Fiedler, and my team and I, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, started trying to think of creative ways to get more funding to schools to help them with all the challenges that school districts face across the Commonwealth, whether it's staffing, facilities needs, all sorts of things, in addition, of course, to enrichment opportunities that many schools want to be able to provide. So, as a parent of young kids, as the daughter of two public school teachers, I care very much about education, and I also care about the planet. And so we wanted to also try to help get more renewable energy online. And thus was born Solar Schools. It's a great opportunity, I think, for schools across the Commonwealth to get the support that they need. And you'll hear from Devin. There's also amazing nonprofits that are helping school districts turn in applications, and DCD and Devin and Mandy and their team have just been, and Christy have been incredible in helping school districts navigate this, because we know that schools at their core, their mission is to help educate and support the developmental needs of young people. And at the same time, we know they've got land, we know they've got roofs, and we know they've got utility bills that are just skyrocketing. And so I cannot think of a better time for Solar for Schools to be opening for year two than right now. because like I said, energy prices, utility bills are on everybody's mind. The cost of energy is only going up. And so Solar for Schools at its heart is really just a state grant program that helps school districts be able to put up solar panels on their property, generate their own energy, and then not have to pay those gigantic electric bills. And instead of paying those huge bills, the school districts individually can choose what to do with that money. They can reinvest it in their facilities. They can hire more educators and staff. They can do whatever feels right for their school community. And so I think it's an awesome program that, again, saves school districts and taxpayers tons of money. It's more renewable energy online those utility bills down. And of course, it provides an awesome opportunity for students. I've heard from so many travelers around the Commonwealth who are so excited to see panels go up. And these include, students who are participating in FFA programs. These are students who go to school in very urban places like my district in Philly. I think across the board, young people are excited about this kind of program, and school districts, at least all the ones I've talked to, at least would like to save millions of dollars. So if there's a school district out there that's not interested in saving millions, I'd like to talk to them. But I think we're there. And again, just thank you so much to Women for a Healthy Environment for hosting this, and thank you again to DCED. And all the nonprofits that have really helped schools take that lead, that step, and turn in strong applications. So yet again, we have $25 million in state money for year 2 of Solar for Schools. There was huge demand in the first year. 3 times as much money was requested in applications as we had. And so I'm hoping we'll have another big turnout this year. And thank you again for hosting this and helping to spread the word.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining and sharing your perspective on this important initiative. All right, I'll throw it back to Devin to keep sharing about how you can apply for this. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you, Rep Fiedler, for joining us today. So as I said, you can find the website through that link there. Or if that doesn't work for any reason, or you just don't have the link handy, if you go to dcd.pa.gov, there's a search bar in the top right of the web page. Just type S, the number 4, and S. Our program web page will be the only thing that comes up there. So the entities that can apply for this grant program are going to be school entities as defined in the Public School Code of 1949. That includes school districts, intermediate units, or area career and technical schools, charter schools, cyber charter schools, regional charter schools. And in addition to those entities from that public school code, we can also accept applications from a chartered school for the education of the deaf or blind, a community college, the Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology, and the Pennsylvania College of Technology. One important thing to note is that we cannot accept applications from private schools or parochial schools under this current setup for the grant. So some important definitions here. When I use school facility under this program, we are speaking about an educational building and surrounding premises owned by an eligible applicant. So any of those applicants we talked about in the last slide. And it does have to be an educational building. So we can't necessarily put an array onto like an admin building or a bus garage unless it is nearby some kind of educational facility or a school. But with the surrounding premises, we can use those athletic fields nearby or just other fields on the premise to install a ground mount system if that is what the school would like to do. Another definition here for qualified provider. So this is defined in the legislation as a person or business capable of evaluating, recommending, designing, implementing, and installing a solar energy project. For the purpose of the grant, an entity will be considered a qualified provider if they have at least one qualified employee. And that qualified employee will be somebody who meets or exceeds one of the following 2 requirements. And that's that they are certified by a group like the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners or the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers as a solar installer. There's a few other groups that kind of fit this definition. I've got them listed out there along with in the guidelines and also in an FAQ on the program webpage. Or they've successfully installed a minimum of 3 photovoltaic or solar thermal systems. So if they've done either of those 2 things, they are a qualified employee, and that is therefore a qualified provider that can provide the solar facility site assessment, which is our next definition. So this is defined in the legislation as an evaluation of a school facility performed by a qualified provider to ascertain whether a school facility is capable of supporting a solar energy project, and estimates of the amounts by which an eligible applicant's energy or operating costs will be reduced by that project. At a minimum, we would want this to include the orientation and location of the proposed solar system, a solar shading study, a 25-year cash flow analysis, a cost estimate of how much this will cost to install, and then a brief maintenance and operation plan. One important thing to note with this program is that if an eligible applicant is awarded grant funds, you cannot contract with the qualified provider who completed the site assessment to complete the solar energy project. So your contractor or your installer needs to be a separate entity, otherwise we will not be able to reimburse those costs. So the eligible projects under this grant program are going to be solar energy projects, which is a project at a school facility related to photovoltaic or solar thermal devices that convert, transfer, or store solar energy into usable forms of thermal or electric energy. In order to qualify, you do have to undergo a solar facility site assessment. The costs that we can reimburse under this program are going to be the purchase and installation of equipment, the energy storage costs directly related to the storage of electricity produced by the energy system, related engineering, design, and inspection costs. These costs are going to be capped at 10% of the grant amount. That being said, if a larger amount of engineering is required, we can use the excess amount as matching funds, as there is a match requirement on this program. If it is a ground-mounted system, we can pay for site preparation costs, so clearing the area, leveling, whatever needs to happen there. And then we can also pay operations and maintenance contracts offered by the installer for the first 2 years. Last one we can cover is admin costs. So this will be administrative costs to sort of administer the grant, to get the documents together that we need for reimbursement, permit fees, legal costs, and other sort of professional service expenses. This cannot exceed 2% of the grant amount, and anything in excess of that will not be able to be reimbursed or used as match. It's kind of a hard stop there. One thing to note here is that we cannot use these funds for power purchase agreements or PPAs. The system does need to be owned and maintained by whoever the actual applicant is. PPAs are a really great way to do these sort of solar projects. We just can't fund them under the grant program. Now, I did talk about there being a match requirement, and that match requirement, as well as the grant maximum, is going to be determined by the applicant's market value to personal income aid ratio. This aid ratio is determined by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, or PDE. I do have a link to their website there, but if you search PDE aid ratios, they're pretty easy to locate just through PDE's website. But if that aid ratio is greater than or equal to 0.7, we can fund 50% of the project costs up to a maximum of $600,000. If that aid ratio is between 0.7 and 0.5, we can fund 40% of the project costs up to $480,000. And if it is less than 0.5, we will cover 30% of project costs up to $360,000. If an entity does not have that aid ratio determined for them, I know most of them do. I know they've got aid ratios for school districts, area career and technical schools, and community colleges. But if for some reason your entity doesn't have an aid ratio, we will use the aid ratio for the school district in which the site is located. As I mentioned previously, there are regions for funding. And specifically, there's 3 regions, and the funds are spread equally across them. So these are the 3 regions sort of listed out in words. It basically worked out to being the east side of the state, the west side of the state, in Philadelphia. That's roughly how the population breakdown works. Funds will be allocated, like I said, evenly across all 3 regions. So in the first year, we had $8 1/3 million go to each of these regions. This year, we have an additional $8 1/3 million for each region, though we did have some carryover from the first year. Specifically in Region 1, we had about $2 million extra. So we have a little bit over $10 million available in that region. As I mentioned kind of back at the beginning, the total amount available in each region will be available on the program website. That'll be updated after each round of awards. So if you're ever wondering what funding is available in your region, you can go double check there before applying. Some other requirements. So this is the one other kind of big change we made this year is if you're doing a roof mounted project, we do want a roofing assessment with your application. So this will be a professional assessment completed by either an engineer or a qualified roofing contractor of the proposed project roof that verifies the roof's ability to support the project. I'm not looking for a full structural analysis. I just want a professional opinion that the roof should be able to support a solar system on it. Um, One other thing we'll be looking for is a utility letter. This does not need to be a letter of support or anything formal. We just want some proof that there's been conversation with your utility provider about what an interconnection agreement might require. Um, and then if you are awarded funds under this program, you will need to bid the project out using the bidding procedures under either the Separations Act or the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. This is from the legislation that one of those two procurement methods need to be used. Um, if you have questions about what might qualify under either of those, I would encourage you to speak with the school solicitor and get their determination, as they will be much more familiar with either of these things than we are. Just a few last notes here. Prevailing wage will apply to this project or any project funded under the program. So you will need to register with L&I for prevailing wage determination. The guidelines can be downloaded at our website. So again, when you find that web page, up at the top of the web page, just under the title, you'll see 3 buttons. One will say contact us, one says guidelines, and then the final one will say apply here. You can click on that apply button and it'll take you to the online application. Alternatively, I've got the website there, and I believe Christy has it in her slides as well. And there will be a $100 application fee that will be paid electronically at the end of your application. Don't worry about missing it. It will not let you submit it before you pay it. It'll take you to a separate website to make the payment. Just make sure you come back and finish submitting after doing that. If you have any questions about the program, you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly. I've got my phone number and my email address there. If you give me a call, I am sometimes up and down quite frequently, so you might just have to leave a message, but I always try to call back as soon as I can. That being said, sometimes it's easier for me to send an email real quick than make a phone call. So feel free to contact me either way. If you have more broad questions about DCED or about the application website, I would encourage you to reach out to the Center for Business Financing at the number located there on the screen. And that is the end of that. So I've got my information here one last time. But thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here so that Christy can pull up her slides and share those. But while I do that, I will answer some questions if we have any.
If you all want to put your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and I could give you the ability to talk. And thank you, Devin, again for sharing about that exciting opportunity on how schools can apply for solar. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And we will have more time for questions at the end. So if you're still figuring it out, what you want to ask, no big rush there.
All right. Thanks, Devin. I'll jump in and we'll get started with the Public School Facility Improvement Grant Program piece. Like Devin, I'm here at DCED representing my particular program here that falls within my purview. And I'm happy to share details and information about the program itself. And we'll talk through some of these other objectives here. Introducing just kind of who we are a little bit more, obviously the program guidelines, and as Devin mentioned, the electronic single application is the tool that we use to collect our application intake, get those submitted into DCED. They flow to the appropriate offices. At the end of these slides, I will provide just some helpful tips and tricks on how to navigate that. So really, you're probably hearing a lot of alphabet soup lately. I myself have been here for about 20 years. I realize, schools and school districts and IUs and other education entities may not always quite fit within the programs that we have to offer here. And so I just wanted to put a quick snapshot of who we are at DCED, what our mission is. And that way, when you hear DCED, you know that, yes, we are the state agency that these programs are falling into to help deploy these funds. And the other entity, just again for familiarity's sake, we have the Commonwealth Financing Authority. This was established as an independent agency of DCED, and really the reasoning is they can do some things that DCED can't, such as like take on debt. And that really does help us again to deploy more funding to various programs across the Commonwealth. And so the Public School Facility Improvement Grant Program, when we take in these applications here at DCED, we will work through the CFA to essentially get the awards made. What this means is the CFA meets every other month throughout the year of 2026. Those board dates have been established and are publicized on their webpage. And we can get more into the timing of the program review as well as when we expect to make the school improvement program grant awards. But we will follow the schedule that the CFA does have here for 2026. As with any program here, when you look at our guidelines, I just like to remind folks, regardless of the name of the program, that might sound super obvious what the intent is and what it's going to be used for. As I mentioned, we have lots of different programs, and Devin and I only work on a fraction of them here at DCED. They're all built for certain purposes. They fund certain things, and they have different intent. So I always advise folks, when you pick up those guidelines, we do try our best to make them all uniform so they kind of look and have the same feel when you're navigating those. But it never hurts to revisit the statement of purpose, which is usually at the top of page 1 of all of our program guidelines. It also provides some of the legal references so that you know exactly where these guidelines come from. And Devin mentioned before, legislation. My program also, the guidelines are formulated from that legislation. So all the reference points are here if you like to know more of the legal piece behind that. So when we get into eligible applicants right off the bat, you'll notice here a little bit different than Devin's program, which was a little broad. So per legislation, compared to the Solar for Schools program, we are only focused on school districts or the area career and technical schools. So unfortunately at this time, the Act defines only these eligible applicants as a school entity. It did not take on maybe a more broader definition that you may be used to hearing when you are interacting with PDE and their general pool of applicants with funding programs that they may oversee. So unfortunately, IUs and charter schools are not eligible to apply under the Public School Facility Improvement Grant Program. When we go into the types of projects that you can request, you can see we have a lot. Some are very clear on what they're trying to accomplish. So we can assist with roof repairs and roof replacement, HVAC, boilers, controls, and the list goes on. I will say that immediately, if you're looking at this list and you have an idea of a project, something that is a need in your school, it never hurts to pick up the phone and have a chat with me. As you can see, there are some broadly referenced pieces here, energy savings projects, health and safety upgrades. We put the onus back on the applicant to help us connect the dots, so to speak, or help us to understand the framework that you're trying to maybe build within your proposal, that your project does indeed maybe fit into one of these two things. So I can use some examples that have often come up. Folks are often interested in other safety things that are not necessarily listed here that we have accepted as eligible improvement projects. For example, fire alarm systems, fireproof doors, or just interior and exterior doors in general that have, working locks and control mechanisms. We've also had folks who want to do lighting upgrades, and that generally, in looking at the lighting that they currently have in their facilities, is not very energy efficient. So they come in with a framework that to update lighting to LED or something that's more energy efficient can fit into the realm of energy savings projects. So those are a few examples just to get you thinking of, hey, I don't necessarily see my specific project here. It never hurts to reach out and kind of talk it through where you're thinking we could make that fit. I will definitely acknowledge the fact that we have other projects approved by the CFA listed here. Unfortunately, because the legislation, the way it's worded, we do have to include that in the guidelines. But where we landed was there really isn't anything else to call out here specifically that had been added. So, other than this list, there's really nothing else, like I said, unless you're able to approach a project from health and safety or energy savings. Um, Another key point here would be emergencies and demolition. I'll just make a quick note about demolition. Again, the intent is to improve facilities, and I believe our guidelines do clearly specify what we mean in terms of the definition of demolition allowable here. We're not out to just demo entire buildings and schools that maybe are no longer viable, no longer in use, have been vacant. We're here to improve the existing facilities to continue to help improve the learning environment. So demolition would be acceptable when it's in conjunction with some of these other eligible improvement projects. Um, but it is not meant to tackle vacant, underutilized buildings or any other buildings you may have on your campus that are just in disrepair or blighted, or for whatever other reason you would like them removed. So just keep that in mind with the demolition piece. And I have some other slides here that specifically address emergencies and how you may go about looking at the emergency aspect to see if you qualify. So again, legislation defines an emergency as a deficiency in a school building that prohibits the school building or a portion of that building from being occupied. So eligible emergency projects, you're looking at a date of an event occurring on or after June 1st, 2024, all the way through the application due date. So if there's an event that occurs, um, some examples to think of are heavy snow or rain events. Maybe a tree fell on your building. A roof has collapsed. There is a fire, a flood, something that renders that facility to be unoccupiable to continue that learning environment. These are the pieces that we're trying to capture. If you look at the date, June 1st, we very strategically placed that as the day after the last round of our applications closed. So anybody who didn't get into the last application round as an emergency, and now you've experienced, a more current emergency, we're trying to give some leeway there for folks who may have incurred costs prior to our awards, and give some flexibility with the consideration that you would have to legislatively meet the definition of emergency projects. So when we talk about the eligible costs and what kinds of things we can pay for, I do just advise folks be mindful of the guidelines. This is not a program that would allow for acquisition, for example. We do have some limitations with the actual costs that we can pay for. So this is pretty much it. We do have some caps on various pieces, mostly to just keep the ask or the project cost within a reasonable amount, so as not to be overinflated with some of the excess contingencies and things like that. We do have engineering and design costs that you can request to be paid out of the grant itself. We do have that limited because, again, we're here to try to help with the overall structural and the facility improvements, and not necessarily do a planning project. But we can help capture at least 10% of that final grant award to be used towards soft costs like engineering and design. And of course, any remainder costs that maybe are falling into that category can certainly be used as match. We also have some contingencies and caps to that as well. And then if you're also looking as an applicant, should you move forward with the project and you do get approved, we have a little carve out for administrative costs that you may want to consider taking advantage of. This does help with costs for publicly advertising and meeting the procurement requirements of our contract, as well as legal costs and documented staff expenses for essentially managing some of the paperwork and making sure that you, as a grantee, are indeed meeting and managing the contents of the grant contract. And much like I mentioned, we also have to call out a few ineligible costs just to let folks know this is not to be used for certain things for sure. And these are just some common examples, very common language that we see in the CFA program guidelines. I will call out specifically again, this kind of ties into the special consideration for emergency projects, but if you are not falling into or qualifying as an emergency project, please pay attention to the fourth bullet point. Costs incurred prior to the approval of grant funds are not going to be eligible on any non-emergency projects. So you want to be very careful the timing of your project in regards to the timing of our program and when we may anticipate awards. The CFA, you may jeopardize your funding if you start the project prior to that award date. So look at, the timing here. You may go out and hold bids and collect bids, but I would avoid engaging with any contractors accepting bids and obviously incurring costs. So it does kind of start even prior to shovel in the ground. So you just want to be paying attention to when you anticipate engaging with those vendors, getting contracts signed for the work, issuing notices to proceed and things like that, as that work prior to our award date may be deemed as starting the project. And again, we are shying away and avoiding administrative only buildings for schools as well as sports facilities. So any other kinds of questions that may come up, some folks say they have admin offices within the school facility and they are part of maybe the lighting project. That piece would be acceptable. We're talking about those standalone administrative buildings where learning does not take place, but obviously school officials do help keep their schools running. We'll jump into other program requirements here. Um, this piece does get confusing. We have had some folks talk about what it means to be a single building or a multi-building application. And the piece here to remember is we would be looking at a single building as one standalone individual building. That's pretty clear. It's pretty obvious. We also have folks who have maybe a what appears to maybe be two buildings, but they are connected physically in some way or another, and maybe have another very large addition. Again, that physical connection piece is going to be very important. So if it's physically connected, and you can walk from one end of the building to the other, we can consider that a single building. Multi-buildings are multiple separate distinct buildings. And really, this just gives you direction on what you can ask for under the Section 2B eligible improvement project. So you can submit as many applications as you want. I'll just reiterate that as well. Like Devin will have the $100 application fee. So any one applicant, you are more than welcome to submit 2, 3, 4, 5 applications if you really wanted to. What I would ask is that you kind of be thoughtful and mindful about what it is you're trying to accomplish with those projects. So if you have one single school building that you want to focus on, it has a laundry list of needs. You may select one or more of those eligible improvement project categories in Section 2B of the guidelines, and that could be your one application. Maybe that particular facility needs HVAC, it needs a new roof, and it needs windows. That would be an acceptable application. When you get into multiple buildings and you have 2 or more buildings that are the subject of that application proposal, you can only select one eligible improvement project category from Section 2B of those guidelines. So if in your district, you have a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school, they're all separate buildings. If they are all in need of roofing repair and roofing replacements, you can catch that all in one application. But what you can't do is then tack on, I have 3 buildings, they're all separate, separate and distinct buildings, but they also need windows. You can't do multiple eligible improvement projects with a multi-building application. You could think about maybe submitting more than one application at that point, or give me a call or email, shoot me an email, and we can kind of talk about how best to kind of structure so that you can kind of capture everything that you may be trying to accomplish. There is also a matching component here. So I do like to remind folks when you read this, the match is not to exceed, I'm sorry, the grant will not exceed 75% of the total eligible project costs. So when you do make your way into the electronic single application, you will be filling out a budget. And in those columns, you will be adding other funding sources that you have secured that are necessary to complete the proposed project in full. At a minimum, we're looking at a 25% match. Obviously, the more your project costs, you may end up submitting or being required to show evidence of more than 25% of that match. Again, it's based on the total project cost, not just the grant column total. The only condition that this may be waived is for either emergency projects or even financial watch or financial recovery status. I would just advise you can find this information on PDE's webpage to see if you do fit the district that is either in financial watch or recovery. And then again, no matching funds will be required for a project that is determined to be an emergency. So that is another benefit of trying to capture some of these eligible emergency projects. You still will have to provide a match waiver request and provide all that documentation, which we'll jump into here momentarily, to justify your emergency situation, but that is one of the only exceptions for the match piece. In our guidelines, as well as Solar for Schools, you'll definitely see some other requirements that even though we aren't going to get into too much detail today, it still is a very good resource to use, and just make sure you and or your solicitor is familiar with expectation is really what this is setting. That way, if you move forward and apply and you come out and come away with an award, we will formally contract that. It will be fully executed amongst both parties as DCD as well as CFA as well as the grantee. Couple of things that I think are the biggest pieces that people get hung up on or maybe they overlook. Bidding requirements. When you're looking at how you're going to procure your project, I realize there are a lot of different ways. You could go through CoStars, KPN. There are GISA projects that can fit within this realm of funding as well. I always defer folks to just make sure you understand from your solicitor what they are advising, as we have compliance that we need to meet with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations dealing with bidding and procurement. So that will be an expected piece to be justified or provide evidence of that as you begin to draw on your funding. The other thing that we have noticed is the Pennsylvania Prevailing Wage Act. This will apply. And I think it's important here because we are part of our job, we are tasked to collect evidence of this as well. But we fully understand that the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry oversees and kind of monitors projects to ensure that the PA Prevailing Wage Act is being followed as applicable. If you're not sure if it applies to you, because I understand there may be some confusion about the types of work that occur and what triggers it, as well as whether or not your project would be deemed maintenance by L&I, that's a conversation to have with L&I. So again, just some things to be prepared so you understand what to expect, because we would hate to find people in a pickle getting approved and contracted, and you move forward on the project and we may hit a little hurdle here in being able to, not release funding. But here is L&I's contact information. Again, I would just familiarize yourself with your procurement laws and what's expected given the way you want to go about getting that competitive procurement solidified, as well as prevailing wage. When we get into the actual application funding, We are looking to have a total project cost of $500,000 or more. So this isn't necessarily the grant amount. It is the total project cost in your budget. This is only waived in the case where a project is coming in for the purchase of the automated external defibrillators. And then CFA will not be awarding a grant in excess of $5 million. So that is our cap for the funding. Please note during this current round, we have $100 million to award. Hopefully that helps give you some idea of what to expect of available money at this time. No need really for the last two bullet points for applicants to really be concerned with. This is more just internally letting you know how we're going to maybe make some decisions in deploying funds. And we will look at each of these things when the time comes. Okay, just hitting on the project activity period. Again, very important that improvement projects may not commence prior to receiving CFA approval. And then the only caveat to that is if you qualify for emergency projects. At this time, and I think I may have a slide upcoming here, but I'll just say this now. In terms of our program timeline, I would say folks who have a project on radar for 2027 is what you should be aiming for in your application proposal. We're already in 2026. The application closes March 13th. I don't anticipate that we'll have awards before fall of 2026. So if you have projects shortly to be going out to bid or they will be starting here this summer, I would not even put in an application there. I would immediately just look for what's on radar in 2027. That way you don't get caught up in a mistake of starting the project prior to the CFA board approval. One of the things that has changed since the last round of funding, we had in the legislation, it has since been removed and amended, that there was scoring criteria and a scoring rubric or matrix to be created that would take into consideration certain evaluation factors. Those of you who've been around for the first round and have seen those first set of the guidelines, just know that these new guidelines have been updated to reflect the standard CFA language that they use to evaluate applications. So this is no scoring. We are not creating a scoring matrix. And this is how they're going to be evaluated. So we look at the overall cost, some of the strategic importance and impact there. So anywhere that you can in the narrative and in your application, speak to any of these things that would be really helpful to know. And I'm sure as you look at the addenda here in the next couple slides, those required pieces will also help us collect some of that information as well. And then we get into what we call the application supplemental items or the addenda. These are going to be required pieces. So when you're in the electronic single application, those items with a red diamond are required fields to complete in order to submit the application. Project description is pretty self-explanatory. We do walk you through several pieces of the information that we're looking to know more about your project. This is where you get to tell your story. Keep in mind that we have analysts here who, may not know or be familiar with your school district or where it is or what you have going on there. So I always tell folks, keep it simple. Of course, some detail would be helpful if this is going to be, key data that we should know. But I always describe it as, maybe where you're personally living, somebody moves in and you have a new neighbor and you're really excited to tell them about what you have going on at your school. What are some of those things you would want them to know about your project and all the good that it could do for your school and the current challenges it may have. So we're really looking at it from the perspective of you're sharing the story with people who have no idea where it's located and they don't know what it's like to go to school there. So just keep that in mind. I will say the additional fields were created in that ESA addenda piece. So if you feel like photos, studies, test results, anything at all to help the written narrative piece, if you would like to upload those, we're more than happy to collect it and take a look at that as well. School building assessments are also required. I will say compared to maybe Devin's needs for his program, these are really not guided in terms of the necessity to have them come from a professional. If you have a professional assessment that is current, certainly feel free to upload that. However, if you're a school that is looking at this and you're like, oh gosh, I don't think we really have one that was a professionally done assessment. We've never really had a third party come out and paid to provide the service. Please do not go spend the money to do that. Um, this is something that, of course, if you have it, great, upload it. If not, don't panic. You're just even looking at the simplest exercise of maybe regrouping with your internal team, like your facilities managers, your building managers, superintendents. And even if you get it passed or some sort of document that the school board accepts as like, hey, this is a thought out plan or strategy or something that shows the priority of the projects within the district and at each school. What document do you have that could help show that thought process? We're just looking at something as basic as evaluating the age, the condition of the facility or the facilities, and, what are your plans to tackle them and when? It's as simple as that. If you're still struggling, let me know. But I do get a lot of panic phone calls with folks now thinking they have to go through this extra step and spend more money just to apply here, and that is not the case. So we will try to work as best we can with what you got. And addenda 3, we'll just jump right into the one single cost estimate that we need. Those of you who were around before know the challenges we had. We also, in addition to the one single cost estimate that was used to inform your ESA budget, we were collecting additional bid tabs. We needed to see at least 3 bid tabs or cost estimates for each eligible improvement project. This again was another very good thing to come out from the amended legislation. It had removed that requirement. We no longer need that for purposes of the application. You'll still be expected, of course, if we do move forward and get approved, you will still move forward a competitive procurement process at that time. But for purposes of the application, we are now just back to collecting one cost estimate from a professional, a qualified bid or cost estimate that shows the total project cost. We do ask that those be current, dated within 1 year of application submission. And this is the piece, again, like I said, it's informing that ESA budget. So it's capturing the grant costs as well as what the match responsibility would be. So that is the number that we're using to help make sure that we're meeting the match requirements. And of course, with the matching requirements, we'd like to just have some of those commitment letters and evidence of other funding sources going into this are secured. A resolution. The one note I will put in here about a resolution is if you can't get one passed by March 13th, you'll still be required to upload a document. You can either upload a draft of that resolution or put a Word document in there that says, to be forthcoming in April, and just let us know a date when we can expect it. That way you don't miss out on submitting the application. And instead what you could do, put a placeholder there, email me directly the executed and resolution that's finalized as soon as you do have it, and we'll be sure it gets added to your application for review. And again, if you're seeking emergency projects, please just pay attention to all the detail that we do require. It is quite extensive, but we do expect the applicant to provide these details so that we can make a proper determination if it meets the legislative definition of emergency. And here's just some other dates. Again, I think we did hit on these. March 13th is the next big one. This will not be a rolling application like solar for schools. So for those of you who may be interested in solar and you are aware that you need a roof improvement, now is the time to maybe take advantage and see if you can get funding to help get a roof in anticipation of maybe later solar work there. So this will be closed for this funding round as of March 13th. Again, looking at fall to make those awards. And then there's just some additional information here about the electronic single application. One thing that I will note, as Devin and I are kind of here as representatives of the program, we work here to help make sure that our analysts are going through the expectation during the review process. If you stumble into any issues or challenges while you're in electronic single application, We could try to help as best we can. So I always tell folks if you have a program related question and you're not quite sure what the match means, or you have a question on the addenda, and what it is we're looking for there, that would be a me and Devin conversation. If you're in ESA and there's some sort of technical issue, please call our customer service center. They're very good at troubleshooting. They can actually get in while you're working on that application and kind of help see where you're getting hung up and get you on your way so that you can get an application submitted by the deadline. Again, here's how you can access the web page directly to the grant to apply. And when you're in ESA, I know a lot of folks, if you're submitting multiple applications, the user settings could be a very helpful tool so that you don't have to keep repeatedly typing some of your applicant profile information. There's also things in there. Unfortunately, you do have to log in if you're looking for just a blank application to share with folks. You can print that after a program has been selected and you're logged in. And then again, you'll see a lot of information here. It's meant to capture all of our program application intake here at DCED, not just public school facilities or solar for schools. So don't overthink it. If you're in there and you see red diamonds, know that you do have to act on those. Any other field that you might be getting tripped up on and there's no red diamond, it's okay to bypass that. You'll still be able to submit without having to complete that field. And just know that you cannot make changes to your web application once it's been submitted. So what I can tell you is we will take this through a review process with our analysts. We will give you an opportunity to answer questions, submit outstanding information, and an analyst will be working with you to just make sure your application meets the eligibility criteria and so forth. But if there's anything that you forgot to add or that you would like to send over to us, you could do that directly to me via email. And eventually you'll be contacted by one of our analysts who will kind of be your point of contact from there through the review. But understandably, a lot of people get panicked when they think they forget something and then, they're just out of the running. We do not do that. We provide the best customer service we can to make sure that we have an application that's eligible and we put it in the best light possible. And that's all for me. And you have my contact information here. So much like Devin, we're very much here to help answer any program related questions. But if there are any right now, we can gladly take those, whether it's about the school facilities improvement or if something popped up from Solar for Schools, Devin is obviously still here to help with that as well.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's very informative. Yes, anybody, please, you can put your questions in the chat or you can raise your hand and I could give you the ability to speak. Okay, we have a question. So I will let Marjorie, I'll give you will be able to speak now.
Hi, thank you so much. Totally appreciate it. And I'm not sure how to turn my video on. So I would love to do that
That's
if I
okay.
could, but don't want to be rude, not trying to be rude. I'm just wondering, just logistics about how do we actually access the application?
Yes, so there are some slides we did provide. We will certainly be sharing those with Piccola who
Okay,
can distribute those to all the attendees today.
great.
That has some really good information in it. And if you haven't located guidelines, those are posted on our webpage as well that provide direct links to just click in right to what we call the electronic single application. But we can certainly follow up with that so you have more of those links and resources at your fingertips.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
We have another question from Tanya. If leasing your school building, are we still able to apply?
Yeah, so this might differ between
Oh,
our two programs, so I'll go first, then I'll let Christy talk. For Solar for Schools, so obviously we allow for charter schools, which usually are leasing their buildings. It is acceptable as long as whatever entity owns the building is also an eligible applicant. And that's just down to some of the wording. The facility has to be owned by an eligible applicant. So if you're leasing from like a school district or something like that, then yes, totally fine. If it's from a private owner, then we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, I would say ownership isn't necessarily a direct factor, but if you're a school district operating there, we may look at that a little bit differently. I would just say if you have a unique structure um, to share with us, depending on what program you're interested in, just reach out ahead of time. I know we've run into some different ways of folks being structured, and we're more than happy to look at what that looks like and if that impacts your eligibility. But I do realize for my program, it is a little more limited, and sometimes we just have unique situations come up, so we can certainly, reach out on that one-on-one basis.
Thank you. And we have another question from Stephen. Does receipt of the PSFI grant in 2025 affect the evaluation of the new application in any way?
That's a great question. So I will say there was a bit of a rumor going around that I heard of earlier this year, as soon as we opened the program, that if you happen to receive funding in the last round, and have a current contract, that for whatever reason you were kind of out of the running, like you already got a piece of the pie, you can't come back. That is not true. I would say, however, let's take a look at what you proposed in that last round and the funding that you came away with, because I do want to acknowledge some folks did not get the amount of award that they may have requested. And so if you are scaling back your scope, and didn't get to accomplish something else, if you have been good about keeping things separate and distinct phases, we may be able to look at another application this round to maybe capture some of that work that you didn't really get to. Also, if you applied for a project in the last round and didn't get any funding, and you haven't yet started that project, you're more than welcome to apply again for that same project. So, yeah, really, we're trying to keep this open to all. And even if you have a current contract, you're doing one thing over here, and you're interested in getting another project application in, again, another situation where it's perfectly fine to apply again.
Yeah. And it wasn't asked for Solar for Schools, but I'll throw this out there anyway. If you did receive a Solar for Schools grant from the first round, you're more than welcome to apply again. My only limitation is I can only have one grant per project, so it would need to be a different project, something new, or like Christy said, a new phase that doesn't apply so much to the solar arrays unless you're doing something very, very large, but totally eligible.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? We have about 2 minutes left. Okay, while you're all thinking of those questions, I just want you all to know that I will be able to send you out the slides after this within the next few days. I'll be able to send you out the slides and a survey as well about the webinar. But I really thank Christy and Devin for being here to explaining both these programs and how all the schools in Pennsylvania can apply for these opportunities. So thank you so much.
Of course, happy to be here.
Thank you for hosting us. We appreciate it. And we provided our direct contact information. So really, if anything comes up and you're unsure, it's best to just reach out before we spend some time in ESA and getting through some things that might not be workable. So let us know how we can help at any time.
All right. Thank you again, Christy and Devin, and thank you all for being participants as well and watching our webinar. I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.